Hello, everyone. We talked about dreamers before, but since it was brought up by the president this weekend, we thought we could touch on it again. I'm Raluca. I provide estate planning, immigration, and family law services for my clients. And here with me is my marketing and office manager, Nina Clear. Thank you for helping other people see our videos with your likes, shares, and comments.
Okay, since we talked about this before, we're going to try to keep the explanation brief, but can you explain what people mean when they say dreamers in regards to immigration?
Sure. There was an act introduced in Congress in 2001 that was called the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors, DREAM Act. And people who would benefit from it are often referred to as dreamers.
So DREAM, the D is the development, R is the relief, education, alien minors. That all spells it out. So that's why it's called DREAM.
That's right.
Okay. So, and who exactly are those people that are considered dreamers?
Very short, any undocumented immigrant who arrived in the U.S. as a child.
And are they required to meet certain criteria beyond just having arrived here as children?
Yes, that's right. They have to be attending or graduating an institution of higher learning. They have to be of a certain age, be physically present in the U.S. for a certain number of years, have good moral character, and not have violated other immigration laws.
And you said this was introduced in 2001. I mean, that was a long time ago, 18 years ago, but it hasn't been passed yet, right?
No, it was introduced initially by Orrin Hatch, a Republican senator, and it has since been changed and reintroduced over a dozen times, but still failed to be passed.
And a lot of people have also heard about DACA. Mm-hmm. So how is that related to the Dreamer Act?
Because of the Senate failed to pass the Dreamer Act, as we mentioned before, after so many attempts, President Obama put the DACA policy into effect. Part of the reason for this was to offset the burden on ICE. DACA has similar requirements that I mentioned before in terms of age, no criminal record, etc. But it's not a law, it's just a policy.
Okay, and if someone has DACA status, can they become a citizen?
At this time, it doesn't give them a way to become a legal permanent resident or a citizen, but it does allow them to stay in this country and give them employment authorization.
And they're staying here legally?
Yes.
Okay. So the status is limited in time, right?
Yes. And you just mentioned they are here legally. Well, it's disputable. It's just a status that they have, but it's not really a legal status. So they do have the right to work and to renew that every 2 years. But they still don't have a legal status.
And I think you mentioned that in our other video, is that the only thing it's doing, DACA stands for Deferred Action.
Yes.
And so basically to help ICE, because they were like, oh my gosh, we now have to deport millions of people.
Yes.
And where he would be overburdened, President Obama, which is legal for him to do, set a policy saying, okay, we're going to focus on the really bad people, the criminals, and we're going to defer any action for these childhood people who every 2 years are paying a fee, submitting for a background check, showing they haven't committed a crime, all of those things.
Yes, it would basically tell ICE that if you come across a person like that, you are not to deport them, because we allow them to, as long as they are qualified for that status, we want to allow them to stay here and work. So don't start a deportation procedure against them.
And we know they're contributing because they have an employment authorization, they pay taxes, I mean, all of those things. So
yes. On the other hand, even DACA status, you can lose it if you do a crime, or if you do something that takes you out of even this limited
Deferred action.
Deferred action.
Not a status.
So
sorry,
yes.
we don't want to say it's a
so
status.
it's nothing permanent. It's
Right.
just a very limited status that they have.
Okay. And then not everyone who would be eligible under the DREAM Act has a DACA. I don't know how you say it because I don't want to say status and people get confused. It's more like just a...
It is a status. It's just not a legal status, let's
Okay.
say. Because when you say legal status, people think that you know, it's still their presence here is still not legal.
And they're on the road to citizenship, which they're not under DACA.
They're not.
Okay.
And most people that are, many people that are eligible for this, they didn't even apply because many were afraid to apply for DACA without a more permanent solution, such as the DREAM Act, because their information then would be in the hands of the government and would basically make them a target of if there was mass deportations. And keep in mind, these people who have lived in the U.S. since they were young children and they basically came here without intending to do anything illegal. They were children. They didn't have the intention to break the law. Many of them, they didn't even know, or they don't even know that they were brought here illegally. So for all intents and purposes, they consider themselves to be U.S. citizens.
Right. I mean, that's a lot of the story you see, or people who applied for college and finally their parents told them, oh, I brought you here when you were 3.
Yes.
Illegally. And they're like, what? Like, they have no idea.
And they don't know any other country but the United States as their home country.
Right. And with the policy that was put in place in 2000, I think it was 14, people could apply for the DACA status, but now that has changed, right?
Yes, people who are currently here under DACA can apply for renewal, but any who qualify but did not apply prior to this administration can no longer apply. The Trump administration initially tried to phase out extending DACA status to people who had already been granted it, but the courts found that was illegal.
Okay, so let's move to today. The Dreamer Act is back in the news. Tell us why that is.
On Saturday, President Trump made a proposal to end the government shutdown by saying he would extend protection for DACA recipients under the Dreamer Act for 3 years.
Which some people think is good. Thank you for that, right? But why are people saying that that was a bad proposal?
Well, as I mentioned, court have already said that any change to those who are here under DACA is illegal and is still working its way through the courts. So this is not a case closed. So President Trump saying he's going to give an extension isn't really how our system of checks and balances work, unless he were to instruct the Justice Department attorneys to withdraw the case, which he won't do. So he cannot promise something that he doesn't have, basically.
And what we found out on Friday was that the Supreme Court, he had asked the Supreme Court to hear this decision that taking away DACA was okay for him as a policy, because the other lower courts have said it was not okay for him to do that. And the Supreme Court said, oh, we're not going to hear it before the summer break. So basically a year in advance, the Supreme Court comes out with their calendar. And they say, we're going to hear these cases. And now he's jumping in and saying, oh, hear my case first.
Yes.
And they're like, nope.
No, they did not. So.
Okay. So, and he didn't say he was going to give them citizenship. That's not what his proposal was.
No.
He was just saying he would extend DACA and not have a pathway to citizenship. So really nothing's changed, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then he also mentioned TPS, and let's tell everybody what that is.
TPS is temporary protected status, which applies to people from certain countries who are fleeing civil unrest or natural disasters.
And what it gave them is a temporary protected status that they could stay here in the U.S. And that this administration also tried to end, and that's being litigated, right?
That's right. The Justice Department tried to end this and was told by a court they could not do so. Again, to say it will not be ended ignores the fact that this is currently being litigated and a court has said it cannot be changed right now. It's the same problem. So the founding fathers established a system of checks and balances for this very reason, so that no one branch has ultimate power and can do whatever they want.
And so the president is in the executive branch, and he is checked by the judicial branch.
That's right.
Or by the congressional branch.
Yes.
The legislative branch, basically,
Yes.
is what it's called. So what he offered, he really wasn't able to offer, and it really meant nothing.
Basically.
Okay.
Basically. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We are happy to help you, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.